Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills bounced back from a defeating loss from the New York Jets by completely dominating and decimating the Las Vegas Raiders.
You are now listening to the Watering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Justin Goddard and Andrew Chang.
Welcome in, everybody, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Watering Buffalo podcast, the show here on the Buffalo FAMBase network. And Justin and I are finally reunited, and yes, it feels so good. So good.
So good.
So good. Just like a Buffalo Bills win, and we're going to talk about it all on today's episode. But before we get into it, I just want to say, Justin, so happy to have you back. If you're listening to this podcast, please go check out this podcast. We're on all social media platforms, all audio platforms, and of course on YouTube by searching up the Watering Buffalo podcast. Shout out to Jake, our executive producer, because we have a fantastic website. Check that out too. And to all the other content creators on the Buffalo FAMBase network. Great stuff. Justin, before we get into today's episode, how you doing?
I'm great, buddy. It's great that we finally are able to get our schedules together. I know we both just have an astronomical amount of stuff going on, and just linking up has been real challenging. Hopefully, the Sunday 1:00 games they're better for an old man schedule. Hell of a lot better this time, this week than after that Jets game. I was in a lot different of a spot then, but today feels good.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for taking that episode on the chin there. I couldn't even imagine doing that at that late of night, so thank you. In any event, we got to talk about a Bills win here, and usually we'll probably break this down, stuff we like, stuff we didn't like, winners, losers, all that stuff, the main format of how every post-game reaction episode goes. So let's get into that. And before I say let's get into that, but before we get into that, I just want to talk about Josh Allen really quick. This guy faced a ton of criticism last week, and rightfully so. 4 total turnovers from Josh Allen. Today, 0 turnovers, 3 touchdowns. Now, there was a pass that, he got hit, and I don't really count that all on him, and I know that it was like illegal hands to the face, so it came back. But conceivably, if that flag doesn't get thrown, that's a turnover. If it did become a turnover, I wouldn't have put that on Allen. That's more on the offensive line protection. But outside of that one play, and one other thing I'm going to talk about, and you already know what I'm going to say, I thought Josh Allen looked really good. I don't know if it was a straight effort from Ken Dorsey and this offensive staff to do more dink and dunk. Take what the defense is giving you. Don't chase the deep ball. But it just looked really good. The offense looked buttoned up, on schedule, and Josh Allen was willing to accept the offensive game script, and he executed. And when the play wasn't working, then he can go do these other things, like roll out to the right and then throw a deep pass to like Gabriel Davis. We saw a lot of that today, and I think the credit goes to Josh Allen, Ken Dorsey, and pretty much everyone on offense. It was a really executed day.
Yeah, today reminded me of kind of like that 2020 Josh Allen, where he played within the system. He was taking what was there. There's still a couple instances where he's taken hits that I don't want to see him take. But overall, just very within the system, and that's going to help not only this week, but setting up future opponents of, you watch him play exactly inside a structure this week. They button up for that, and he's still got that arm to put it over the top. This is what Josh Allen can look like, mistake-free and not trying to play hero ball. Letting his playmakers get the ball in their hands and go to work. It doesn't have to be all him. But I'd say probably my favorite thing about Allen today, polar opposite of week 1, is he really trusted the pocket today. Week 1, he looked jumpy. It was something like, 3 of his 5 sacks last week were credited to Josh Allen, not the offensive line, for kind of just bailing out of the pocket early. So he was really kind of hanging back there and trusting the offensive line today. And that's something that we all want to see. Josh Allen stay in the pocket and make the plays there on the regular, and use that extraordinary ability when you have to really get teams.
Yeah, I will agree with you that Josh Allen, I already said it, he looked really good, fantastic out there. My one gripe is that I think it was like 3rd and goal or something like that. I don't remember the exact situation or down or whatever. But basically, it's like, okay, he's running and he just tries hurdling someone from the 3-yard line. And like, I get it. And apparently they were like former teammates. So I guess if you're a former teammate of Josh Allen, just expect him to hurdle you, or at least attempt to. But it was kind of like, what are you doing? Like, just stop. I mean, personally, I think if he put his head down and kind of like rushed it, he probably could have got a touchdown on that. He's got a lot of speed on him. It's just I don't personally like the hurdle in that situation. It's just too risky. And after all the hits that he took last week, and to your point, a lot of it was on Josh Allen's shoulders because he sought out that contact. It's like, you didn't need a hurdle there, guy, and we need you for all of these regular season games and hopefully the preseason, and hopefully we can win 4 in a row there too, guy. So I just need Josh to pick and choose his battles a little bit more. Like McDermott said, be smart, be smart. That was like a little hiccup, a little black eye on the relatively well executed day, if I just had to point something out.
I'll take it. I'll go.
Go ahead.
I'll go a step further on the hurdle front. It can make for a really fun highlight reel, on ESPN here and there, whatever. Don't hurdle in football in general. It's a very violent sport with people going very fast, and you chop out the legs and you're landing on your head. Just nobody in football needs to hurdle.
I think Josh Allen's like 4 or 5 hurdles, so that's a pretty good percentage. You're at 80% on hurdling people. I get it, it's awesome, but like,
stop it.
That 20% of the time, something bad might happen, or you might just not hurdle someone. Let me think of the other thing that Josh did that. Oh, you know what? I did notice that I felt like, and to your point, he did trust the protection of this defensive line a lot more, and rightfully so. The offensive line should have had a cakewalk against the Raiders' defensive line outside of Max Crosby. And, for the most part, Max Crosby, I felt like he was held in check. Spencer Brown did fairly well. I think that they definitely helped him out a lot, but we'll get into all that a little later. My main point from this is that there was, I think, maybe 1 or 2 times I saw Allen just bail out of the pocket when he didn't need to do so. But again, I feel like I'm really nitpicking, and for the most part, I'm okay with nitpicking. People are going to be like, well, how are you not satisfied? He had a really good day. Well, yeah, but that meme, Justin, where like perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. That is what I've come to expect of Josh Allen. So anything less of that, to me, is like, what is going on?
He was great.
What is happening?
But
yeah, he was great. But it's like, well, and the reason why I hold him to such a high standard is because he have the sample size of Josh Allen being at that level of excellence is massive. Completely, like, there's just so much sample size in him being that good. So when I see anything a little bit off from that, I'm like, what? Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but we can get into the next segment of what we like and what we didn't like. But what are your thoughts about that?
For me, what I really liked today was the 3-headed attack of the running back room.
Okay, so nothing about what I said about Josh Allen.
Oh, I thought you were moving to the next segment.
No, I was just like, anything else before we get into the next section?
Oh, yeah. So what you said, yeah, with Allen, he's at that level of, like you said, the giant sample size. The only thing I really have criticism for today is the couple of things we said. But I mean, on the day, 6 incompletions. Maybe you want to see a 300-yard game, but 3 touchdowns. One of my favorite plays of the day from him was it was actually an incompletion. He was rolling to the right, and he had Gabe Davis kind of streaking with him, and it's one of those classic passes from Josh Allen where he just fits it into like a triple coverage, and you're like, how the hell did he do that? And he actually threw it away, and you never see a throwaway from Josh Allen. There was times last year I thought he was throwing the ball away, and it was the back of the end zone to Knox touchdown. That little detail of, him willing to give up on that play and play for the next down. If we see that more consistently, I think that's one of like the biggest growth things we can see from Allen is, not every play has to be wildly successful. You can live to see the next play. And I think that's huge for the rest of the season.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get into the things that we liked and didn't like now, or didn't like rather. And let's go into the stuff that we didn't like, since that's probably going to be a shorter list, and we'll end everything off on a high note. I always like doing it like that. And I guess I'll go first in things I didn't like. And honestly, it feels like I'm really, really struggling to come up with things after such a dominant performance. But one thing that I have noticed from the preseason and from game 1, and now it kind of seems like it's trickling, it got a little better this game, is that I feel like special teams hasn't been so special lately for the Buffalo Bills, and for a team who invests so much into improving this area, 1/3 of the game. It just feels like other teams are doing pretty good against the Buffalo Bills special teams. And I don't know if we're taking a step back. I don't know if Matt Smiley is like not happy or not performing well, but like I just need a little bit more from this unit, considering the resource allocation that the Buffalo Bills have spent.
Yeah, so I agree with you there. And I thought I had kind of a deep cut going to the special teams on something I didn't like. My specific play was Damian Harris. When they lined up to punt, he just kind of got blown up and ran back into Sam Martin. Fortunately, Sam Martin ends up okay after the play. He's able to get a pretty good punt away. But that was, pretty early in the game. And that's the type of play where, they block that kick and take it the other way for a touchdown. That can significantly change the momentum. You could have had your punter hurt, and now you're playing 4-down football the whole game. It's something that we've actually seen a little bit of in the past. I think there was a Colts game where we had a punt blocked. But yeah, just some of the special teams just seems like it needs to be tightened up a little bit. And then we also see like the awesome side of special teams with the one return. It seems like over the past couple of years, special teams has been absolutely lights out. And yeah, it looks like kind of a spot on this roster that needs to be looked at again.
Yeah. Now, and that's not to say that the special teams unit didn't perform well altogether. I just think that, again, similar to my Josh Allen point, is that I hold that unit to such a high standard that when we don't get that mean and anything less than what we're used to me, I'm like, that's weird. I'd thought that you guys were going to be better, and like, because that's what I've come to expect. And maybe that makes me like, a fair weather Bills fan or something like that. I don't really know if that makes sense, but to me, it's just, that's what I've come to expect from this team. So I want that. So do you think that makes me a fair weather fan? Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, right? Like,
no, I think with the success that this team has had in recent years, and all the improvements that we've tried to make on offense, on defense, and for a team that has so many players under contract that are special teams only. And, you know, that having seen that be at a high level over the past few years, kind of feeling like it took a step back. To me, it's like, hey, that's something I wasn't really thinking about at all this offseason. Figured we would either, you know, stay the same or, you know, add a couple pieces that could contribute. Maybe we'll be even better. But I wasn't thinking at all about, like, do we need to worry about special teams this year? And I'm not like panic mode on it all, but, you know, there's definitely evidence for special teams being able to be had right now.
Yeah. Now let's move on to the next things. This is probably the last things for me that I personally didn't like, is that so far Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield kind of feel like an afterthought in this offense. Trent Sherfield, 0 targets, 0 receptions, kind of weird. He's like your backup Z receiver, so it's kind of hard to compare him and Deontay Hardy together. And Deontay Hardy had, 2 catches in this game for 4 yards? And I know it's early in the season. It's only game 2, but I'm having a hard time discovering or envisioning the roles for both of these players right now. And unless, you know, there's something up Ken Dorsey's sleeve and he's like waiting to unleash it for like a bigger game. But you kind of gave Deontay Hardy a fairly good contract to come over, and so far he just doesn't look like he's doing much. Now I understand there's some other factors that go into it. The Bills are running more 21 or 12 personnel, not 21, that'd be interesting. 12 personnel, so 2 tight ends, 1 running back, less, you know, options for wide receivers, but it still feels like it's Stephon Diggs and then a bunch of other guys. And I don't know how I feel about that right now.
Yeah, so I kind of have this in both columns of things I didn't like and kind of things that I did like. What I don't like about it is we're now through 2 games where we haven't really seen much even like usage at all for them. So don't love that. I mean, for me, it's like valuable depth if one of our top players goes down. But I still want to like see it on the field to know that it's actually valuable depth. The side of it that I do like is that, you know, the top guys that we have in Diggs, Davis, Knox, and Kincaid, we're all getting it done. But for these wide receivers, I was really excited for them to be brought in, and even if it was kind of a specialized role, to be able to make an impact. And you know, we've seen them try to kind of get Hardy involved with, you know, some bubble screens. This is where I would love to see, you know, some speed motions, some jet sweeps, just some different like creative looks. And we really haven't seen anything from Sherfield at all. So yeah, would love to see them a little bit more factored into the game plan, for nothing else to know, you know, what we have if somebody goes down. But in a game like today where, you know, we are up pretty big, you know, we end up having Kyle Allen finish out the game. We had kind of our second team defense in there. That would be kind of the perfect time for me to just, hey, Diggs, take the rest of the day off. Let's see what we have in these other guys.
Yeah, and when I say Stephon Diggs and all these other guys, I mean, I understand Gabe has his days. And today he actually had 6 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 7 catches, 66 yards, 0 touchdowns. And then the next closest person from there is Dalton Kincaid with 5 catches for 43 yards, 0 touchdowns. And then, you know, James Cook had 4 catches, and then everyone else had like 1 or 3 or 2. But I think what made the Bills offense so potent back in the day is how much they spread the ball around. And now, at least last year, it felt like all they could do is give it to Diggs. It was Diggs or bust, Diggs or bust. And, you know, that's great that Diggs can be him. He is him. but sometimes him needs a break. Sometimes him gets too much attention. Sometimes Hims is a commercial that, where you're losing hair or you got some ED problems or like that, and that ain't Stephon Diggs. We need more from this other wide receivers and weapons from the Buffalo Bills, and that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so this is sort of why I put it in like both my columns, right? So I agree. It was kind of Diggs and whatever else last year. So I mostly want to see those guys able to contribute if we're not getting the contributions from those other top players. If we can have 200 of our 250 yards passing go between four guys and we're having great success with it, I'm all for spreading the ball around, but like I still prefer that we're spreading to those top targets. So I kind of feel like we have a little bit of that distribution like we had when we had Smoke and Beasley. We're kind of getting that look back. For me, it's knowing what we have beyond that. And like I said, if we can get the contributions from, basically that 12 personnel with Cook, Kincaid, Knox, Davis, and Diggs, I'm good with that. I just want to know what we have behind there as well.
Right. He's Justin. I'm Andrew. This is the Wandering Buffalo podcast.
Hey, this is Dick DeGroat, Bill's dad. Now back to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining me and Justin on this episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast. Again, you can find us on social media, podcasting platforms, and of course on YouTube by searching up the Wandering Buffalo podcast. Justin, let's talk about things that we liked. We already talked about Josh Allen, so I don't think we need to belabor that point anymore, but I'll just give everyone a quick recap. He looked good, made smart plays for the most part, and trusted his offensive line. Now, I know you made a comment earlier about the rushing attack, so I'm going to let you kick this one off here. So why don't you tell people what you liked from that rushing attack?
Yeah, jumped the gun on this one earlier. Yeah, just the three-headed attack that we had today, and seeing James Cook kind of be the quote-unquote workhorse. I mean, 17 total carries. It's not some crazy number, but a decent spread. Damian Harris with 7 carries, Latavius Murray with 6 carries. But I like the usage of them, and we saw Damian Harris and Latavius Murray both get touchdowns. Kind of that tough running spot that we saw be Josh Allen so often. Was kind of a little bit disappointed on the 4th and 1 at the goal line that that was a pass play and not smashing up the middle with Josh, Latavius, or Damian Harris. Maybe that was trying to catch him sleeping, planning on that run play. But kind of what we saw towards the tail end of last season with James Cook going into this season. I mean, he averaged 7.2 yards a carry, with splitting carries with 2 other running backs, still able to go over 100 yards. He looks fast. He looks shifty. He added another, 36 yards in the passing game. So, I mean, for how much this offense has historically liked to move through the receivers, and we've always talked about having that complementary run game, it's still going to be this team goes as far as Josh takes us, right? But having another 160 yards on 20 touches for James Cook, I love that being in the mix, and it's something that we haven't really had that dynamic of an athlete back there with Josh Allen.
Yeah, I thought that the Bills' rushing attack was super good, and I gotta talk about that first drive coming out of half. It looks like they really put a strong emphasis on the run game, and it was kind of like one of those closeout moments, but it was at the start of like the second half. Like, when like, all right, the Bills got the ball and they're just going to try to bleed the clock out, and it was kind of like, I don't know if the Bills can actually do this or not type situation. And now I'm more confident than anything that I feel like if the Bills had to do that, I'd be like 75% sure that they could do it, as opposed to like the last couple of years, it'd be like 50% sure, maybe less. But getting back to it, I felt like the Bills were basically like, hey, let's just bleed the clock out coming out of the second half, make them have to be one-dimensional, and eventually they pretty much had to be, and it worked. They had a really, really long drive. What was that first drive like? Coming out of that, like 9 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
It was incredibly long. I couldn't believe how long the drive was. I was like, man, that defense of the Raiders has to be tired. And outside of James Cook, who had a really good day, Damian Harris, 7 carries, 33 yards, 1 touchdown, average of 4.7 yards. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Like, so if your back is just, averaging 4 to 5 yards per carry, I think that's a pretty good average. Now, what's even more interesting for me, and what I really like, is the fact that Josh Allen was at the bottom of the list. I'm not counting Kyle Allen because he just had the kneel downs. But Josh Allen only had 3 carries. One of them was that weird hurdle that we already talked about, so I'm not going to talk about it again. But 3 carries for 7 yards. That's what I want to see. I want Josh to be on that bottom end. Not saying I don't want him to run, because that's what makes him really good, but I prefer him not to be the leading rusher if he doesn't have to be the leading rusher. And today was one of those days where he understood the assignment, he did everything right, and the running backs had such a good, solid day, and I'm just so happy about it.
Yeah, and that was kind of my ending point there too, of like, I love Josh Allen running. It's so fun to watch. It's, when he's just torching people with his arm, they kind of sell out to stop the pass, and he, rips off one of those 40-yard runs right up the middle, or he has to escape the pocket and you thought for sure you had a sack. But I'm going to love so much more than that any game where he has 6 incompletions and he only had to run the ball 3 times. That's a recipe for success.
That's how you'll know. Let's quickly talk about defense here, because I feel like they let up the first touchdown to Devontae Adams fairly easily, but then after that, they just laid the clamps. You ever watch Futurama? The clamps. Yeah, I feel like that's what happened. They clamped him. And that's not something out of the norm for the Buffalo Bills. I feel like last year and the year before that, it was like, wow, we gave up that opening drive so easy. And then you saw on social media, X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, like, oh no, the sky's falling, like we saw, oh no, we suck again, thing. And then out of nowhere, like, the Bills just adjust, and from there, Jimmy Garoppolo did nothing. He had a quarterback rating today of 26.2. Terrell Bernard, interception. Matt Milano, interception. Like, the league's leading rusher last year only had what?
Negative
let me look.
2.
Yeah, he had negative 2 yards. Now, he made up for it in the passing game for like 51 yards, but this isn't a bad running back and a bad rushing offense. They just got clamped, honestly. So I'm really excited what I saw on defense. Terrell Bernard looked fairly good. Now, I have some somewhat question marks around the safety area, mainly with injuries, which I'm not a big fan of. It sounds like Micah Hyde had like a hamstring injury, and what's his name? Oh my God, I'm blanking out. Leonard Floyd has like an ankle injury, but they pulled him out. So hopefully they'll be good to go for next week against the Commanders. But just in general, I just want to comment that, man, that defense looked good once again. Although, that's not to say that the pass rush didn't look as strong as they did week 1. But just in general, again, solid day.
Yeah, I think there's a ton to like from the defense. And, seeing week 1, we'd given up 100 yards on 2 carries last week, right? And then, I start worrying about the run defense. The middle linebacker is a big part in run defense, and seeing that in week 1, I was worried about Josh Jacobs coming in this week. Like you said, he was the leading rusher for the whole NFL last season, and this kind of goes into your last point about the Bills being able to run the ball and make them one-dimensional. Well, the Bills defense did that to them too by stopping the run. Even if there's a point deficit here, if they're ripping off, 10, 15-yard carries here and there, you're going to stay committed to the run. It's what they want to do as an offense. To be able to hold a running back like Josh Jacobs to -2, and he only had 9 carries on the day. Like the Bills made them completely want to go away from even trying that. So that's an awesome thing to see, and it's kind of something we've seen from the Bills in recent years. Of we tend to like have our worst run game defense with like some random dudes, but when it's like a marquee running back, a Derrick Henry, a Josh Jacobs, those types of dudes, they really game plan specific.
The clamps.
They put on the clamps and they take away what the other team does best in those games, and love seeing that.
Yeah, they try to make them play left-handed, to put in other words. Now, last little bit before we get out of here, I want to talk about Spencer Brown. This man faced a lot of flack after the Jets game, and rightfully so. This game did pretty good, honestly. I mean, the Bills kind of helped him out here and there, and I'm not saying he did like a fantastic job, but definitely signs of growth. But I need to see him stay on this track and continue it for the rest of the season. If he wants another contract with the Buffalo Bills, this inconsistent up and down roller coaster ride that we get with Spencer Brown can't be a thing. Yeah. We got the low week 1. We got the medium to high week 2 against an elite pass rusher, Max Crosby. I needed him to go out there and do it again more consistently against consistently good defensive linemen, and maybe not as much help. But I need more from Spencer Brown and more of sample size.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the roller coaster ride of Spencer Brown, right? Like, he has all these physical abilities, he has the athleticism, he has a great week, he has a bad week. Today, he got some help here and there, but Max Crosby is one of the biggest freaks in the NFL as a pass rusher, and he was credited with not even a pressure today, 0 pressures. You didn't really hear his name being called at all. So hopefully this can kind of be maybe a confidence booster, a stepping stone, a launching point, whatever you want to call it. If we get this level of play from Spencer Brown every week, I'm not worried about the right tackle position anymore. It's a matter of, can he stay healthy, and can he string these types of performances, one after another, and play consistently like that.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you took the Michael Jordan super athletic person and then you said, okay, go play baseball. And we don't really talk about that because it's a really hard thing to do. Athleticism can only get you so far, right? So eventually it needs to click together. But other than that, we had a really good time talking about today's episode, recapping the Buffalo Bills' dominant win over the Las Vegas Raiders. Justin, do you have any parting words for the audience here?
Oh, not particularly. It was great being back with you this week. Hopefully we can keep, us like Spencer Brown, we have to keep this momentum going throughout the season. So I'll see you this time next week after the Washington game.
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you for listening to today's episode. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Go check out the Buffalo FAMBase and all the content creators out there. And hopefully we'll be talking about another Bills win next week. And it'll be even a better game from this team. And just in general, I'm happy football's back.
It's good to be back on track.
Absolutely. So thank you for listening. Hope you have a good start to your week. And as always, go Bills.
Go Bills.